Welcome to the show. Good to have you with us again this week. It's a wintry week here in the Ohio Valley. It's good to be inside, but I've got a great show planned for you. Later on, I'm going to have a guest with me, Gary Glessner, who's a local accountant, financial advisor, insurance. He's into a little bit of everything in the financial world. We'll talk to him about the new tax code that we've been hearing so much about and other things in the financial world. But first, I want to start off with some of our usual features. And don't forget, later on, I'll be talking about Steelers and Pirates. A lot to talk about with them. Start off, though, with the quote of the week. And this one comes from actor, musician, comedian Henry Collins, who said, "In winter, I plot and plan. In spring, I move." And I thought that was a very appropriate quote with the weather we've been having. And it is a good time to plot and plan and think about things when you want to stay inside. You don't want to go out. Come up with a plan for your year. New Year's resolutions people always have, but sometimes resolutions we think more about in our personal life. I think it's good to have a plan for all parts of your life, whether it be personal, professional, religious life, family life. But those things, you can kind of come up with the plan for the year and how you're going to attack things. Maybe even those home repairs. I need to do this, in the spring. I need to take care of this in the fall. In the summertime, this is a good time to do that. So I think that's a very appropriate quote from Mr. Collins, and it's something that I try to do, is spend this time when you don't really want to get out and you can't do a lot of things, to really come up with that plan, because it is better to plan ahead. You'll be more effective. You'll get more things done if you plan ahead of time. So that's a quote this week. A legal tip that I want to give you this week, and it's I think also an appropriate one this week, not so much because of the time of year necessarily, but also because of who my guest is. And that is, if you have something unusual happen in your life with money, seek advice from a CPA before doing your taxes that year, or have them do your taxes for you. A lot of people do their taxes themselves, and for some years that may be okay. I mean, you may just have nothing unusual happen in your life. You get your paycheck every 2 weeks and you go about your business and you think you can fill out your own tax returns, fine. Some people can do that. Some people may think, well, I can go to one of these national services like an H&R Block, where they have people come in that are seasonal people and aren't necessarily as trained or as qualified as someone at a CPA or at their office would be. And for some years that may be okay. But particularly on the years where you have something unusual happen in your life, someone leaves you money in their will, you have a big bonus at work, you've made a big contribution to a charity, or even some contributions to a charity that's out of the ordinary, a spouse dies, something like that happens, it's very good to seek advice from someone that's the most qualified person that you can go to seek that advice, so that you don't get into a bad way. And I've seen people, as a lawyer, I don't do tax law. We're primarily a litigation firm, so it's not like I'm dealing with this on a daily basis. If somebody needs advice, I tell them, go see a CPA or a tax lawyer. But I have seen people that I know, and also seen clients who have maybe gotten themselves into a bad way, or people just call and say, what do I need to do with this? And I say, well, you need a tax lawyer, because they have tried to do things on their own and haven't sought out that advice from somebody that's qualified and a professional that can give them sound advice. And you don't want the IRS, the government, knocking at your door. And particularly this year, with the changes in the tax code that we'll be talking to Gary Glessner about, you don't want to just assume that things are all the way they've always been, or try to do things on your own, because that's another way to get yourself into gears with the government and be in a bad way. So, my advice to you is make sure that you talk to the people who are qualified, go see a CPA, and make sure that these things are done the right way so you don't end up in a bad situation. We're going to take a break. When we come back, I will have my guest with me. That's Gary Glessner. Stay with us here on the Jamie Bordas Show.
Bordas and Bordas, fighting for justice.
So, how was your first day?
Long. So, Josh asked me about you.
Daddy's home. Go get him.
For your home, for your life, for more than 50 years. The Hardwood Specialists, DeNoon Lumber.
Bordas and Bordas, fighting for justice.
Welcome back to the show. This is my favorite time each week when I have a guest with me. And this week my guest is someone who is very diversified in the financial world, accountant, financial advisor, insurance business owner, and that's Gary Glessner. Gary, thanks for being here on the show.
Hi, Jamie. Appreciate being here.
You're a Wheeling native. Grew up in this area, attended Lindsley, and then went on to further your education, and gone from maybe just being I don't say just, but an accountant to now this diversified financial services that you offer here to people in the local area.
Yes, I did. I went to Lindsley and worked for a firm in Pittsburgh out of college for 11 years, and my father helped me get started here in Wheeling, and I've been practicing ever since I started my office in 1998.
People may not realize you've got a very convenient location right on National Road in the Elm Grove area, easy to access and find. But there's as I mentioned, a diversified array of services that you now offer. And what type of things can people come to you for?
Basically, we take a holistic approach. It started with businesses and has transpired over into individuals, but we offer tax services, accounting services for individuals and businesses. We offer property and casualty insurance services for individuals and businesses, and we also offer retirement plan services for individuals and businesses.
So kind of the full scope there. And one of the things, with being in the accounting world as you are, people keep hearing about this new tax code. One of the big things that's happened here in the Trump administration are the changes to our taxes, and people may be wondering, how does that affect me? Whether they be a business or an individual. Maybe we can take those kind of one at a time, but maybe start with what can businesses expect, and why is it important for them to know what some of these changes are?
For businesses, first of all, this has been one of the largest tax bills that we have seen in over 30 years. And it all stemmed from originally starting to benefit businesses. Businesses are going to see, specifically C corporations, are going to see rates go from 35% down to 21%. There are also other benefits for businesses. You're going to see increase in accelerated depreciation for businesses. So the whole idea of this was to stimulate job growth, and that major corporations would retain a lot of the tax dollars that they were paying to the federal government in order to make capital improvements, increase employee pay. That's why you're seeing some of the major corporations now doing bonus incentives. You see it all over the news. They've given $1,000 pay increases and bonuses to employees.
With respect to those changes, one of the things people may ask is, what if you're starting a new business? You mentioned a C Corp. People may think, should I be a corporation? Should I be an LLC, a sole proprietorship, a partnership? I mean, does the tax code and the changes to it affect, the way that people should go or anything like that?
We will see, in my opinion, a C corporation for professional services mainly. You will see the tax rate be effective at 21% for professional service corporations. An LLC, when you form a business and you form an LLC, it is, depending on how many owners that LLC has, you can elect to be treated many different ways under the Internal Revenue Service Code. If you're a single member LLC, you can be taxed as a sole proprietor by default. If you're two or more partners of an LLC, you can elect to be taxed as a partnership, an S corporation, or a C corporation. So what I've found with the new tax code is basically if you're a professional service entity, which is doctors, lawyers, accountants, financial services, you really have to look at what your bottom line profit's going to be to figure out whether you're better off being that C corporation or a pass-through entity such as a partnership or an S corporation. And basically the $315,000 threshold, if you're married filing joint, is really where that starts to benefit, because C corporations have two levels of tax and an S corporation has one level of tax.
Okay. Let's talk about individuals a little bit. What do you think we'll see here with respect to changes to individuals as a result of the new tax code?
I think we will see some simplification, because they raised the standard deduction from basically a single filer of about $6,400 up to $12,000, and a joint filer is going to $24,000. They got rid of the personal exemption. So you're going to see a lot more individual taxpayers utilize standard deductions and not have to keep records of itemized deductions more so than you've ever seen in the past.
When you say a standardized deduction, is that something you just kind of take as a matter of right, so to speak, or is that something where you have to have given?
A standard deduction is what the IRS gives you based on whether you're a single filer or a joint filer by default. An itemized deduction is basically if your itemized deductions are higher than the standard deduction that the federal government gives you, you can itemize. Now that they raised that standard deduction threshold, more and more taxpayers might not necessarily benefit from itemization. And some of the key areas to itemize are mortgage interest, real estate taxes, charitable contributions. Those are the main ones. There are a few others.
With respect to things like mortgage interest, I mean, that's one of the big ones that people think about is, most people have a mortgage and they think, I can deduct this. Are there any changes into what people can and can't do or with respect to their mortgages?
Mortgage interest you still can deduct. They've lowered the dollar amount of the loan for which is eligible for a deduction from $1 million down to $750,000. One of the big things that they eliminated starting in 2018 though was the ability to deduct home equity loan interest. That so many people took advantage of that, and that has completely been eliminated.
That's one of the things that people may wonder. The home equity loans oftentimes, benefit people that are in the middle class that need a loan to take care of some unexpected things that happen to the house, and now that's going to be something that's gone. You can't, that deduction is no longer there. That's a little bit troubling to me. Are there ways though that you think that might be made up for?
I still think people are going, because we're in such a low interest rate environment. I know we've had 3 rate increases recently, but we're in such a low interest rate environment. I don't think it's going to stimulate people to to borrow money, take home equity loans out like they used to. But it's something to be concerned about for sure.
We need to take a break. When we come back, I'll continue speaking with Gary Glessner about things in both the accounting and financial world. Stay with us here on the Jamie Bordas Show.
We're Panhandle Cleaning and Restoration, and we're gonna save you. We've got it down to a science, an absolute state of art. We do it all, restoration, cleaning, and reconstruction. When disaster strikes, just pick up the phone. We're Panhandle Cleaning and Restoration, and we're gonna save you.
Don't forget to do your homework.
All right, Mom. Trick or treat.
Here you go. Happy Halloween.
For your home, for your life, for more than 50 years. DeNoon Lumber.
Welcome back to the show. I've been speaking with my guest this week, Gary Glessner. And Gary, we were talking about this new tax code and how it's been the most sizable changes, in the past several decades. And one of the things that people may not realize as well is some of the changes to something you were telling me is called SALT, or people refer to as SALT.
That's correct. SALT has got a lot of attention nationally. It's a state and local income tax deduction that shows up when a person itemizes their deduction. The IRS in this new tax bill has capped that deduction for those people that itemize at $10,000. Historically, if your state and local income taxes and your real estate taxes are thrown into that, if they were $60,000 or $70,000 and you were able to itemize, you were able to take advantage of that. Now that dollar amount has been capped at $10,000.
One of the benefits of this new tax code is that some of the rates are coming down for individuals and some of the brackets have gone up. And how's that going to affect people there?
Yes, they have. The brackets have come down roughly 2 to 3%, and the brackets have gone up, meaning that for some individuals, if they were at a certain dollar amount last year, they fell within a certain bracket. Now, because that bracket has been moved up, they might actually be down maybe 8 percentage points, for instance, because they're just in a lower bracket and that threshold for that bracket has moved up.
Okay. So people could find themselves individually paying a lower rate of tax because they're not in the same tax bracket, and once they get to that other tax bracket, the rates themselves are lower there.
That's correct.
Okay, well, that'll be a benefit to people as well. You know, one of the things that's maybe not as pertinent nationally, but is very much pertinent here in the Ohio Valley is, you know, all the activity going on with respect to people's land. And, you know, people sometimes have their land damaged and they're made payments by oil and gas companies, coal companies as a result of damage to that land. And, you know, people may wonder, you know, if I get a payment for that, is that taxable?
That is correct. We have seen in our office a tremendous amount of property owners being approached by coal companies or oil and gas companies that have either done damage to property, be it land or timber, and the agent or the agent for the oil company has come in and said, this consideration is considered damage, you don't have to pay tax. And we always tell our clients to basically don't accept the payment until you come to talk to us about the dollar amount that they're offering, because if that amount exceeds your basis, it is taxable. It doesn't matter what that land agent or that agent for the oil and gas company says.
People may wonder what basis means. What's a basis for land?
Basis means how much you have, how much you either paid for it, or basis can be acquired a couple different ways. Most common, it's how much you pay for something, which would be a house or property. It could be if you were gifted the property before someone passed away, then you acquire the basis that that person had that gave it to you. If you acquired the property as a result of an inheritance, then you receive a stepped up basis, which is the value of the property at the date of death of that person who you acquired it from.
Does the basis include improvements you've made to the land? Say I buy a piece of property that has a house on it and I pay $200,000 for it, and then I need to remodel, it needs a new roof, it needs this, it needs that, and I end up spending another, you know, $25,000, $50,000, and is that included in the basis?
Yes.
So the things like that would be included.
Yeah,
if you
that
make
also
improvements?
increases the basis. That's correct.
Okay. Let's turn the tables a little bit away from accounting to, you know, insurance and the other financial services that you provide. You mentioned you do that for businesses, you do it for individuals, and in the world of insurance, one thing I found is that a lot of business owners don't realize the full gamut of things they may need in terms of insurance. They may just think, okay, I'll go get a general liability policy and I'm set. You know, a lot more to it than that.
That's correct. One of the big hot topics with regard to commercial insurance nowadays is cyber liability coverage. We see so many companies in the news have been either hacked or their client data has been compromised, so cyber liability has been a big one. And there's so many other ones. Umbrella coverage. Obviously, everyone, if you're an employer in the state of West Virginia or any state for that matter, you need workers' compensation coverage, but there's just a vast array of coverages that that are out there that a lot of people might not know about.
You know, another one that I've been seeing a lot just in reading the newspapers is, you know, you see so many times where employees, you know, steal money, and you know, I've seen on policies now where there's, you know, some type of theft coverage, things of that nature that maybe could be important for businesses that have money or people that have access to money.
Yes, a lot of policies nowadays, if you write a BOP policy, which is a business owner policy, a lot of standard market carriers write BOP policies nowadays, and they cap exactly what you're talking about within that policy. It might be a $10,000 coverage limit or a $20,000 coverage limit. So if you want to increase that coverage, you actually have to endorse that policy to provide higher than coverage than what you might be typically given within that policy.
You talked about how, you know, taking a holistic approach and offering the different services, insurance that we just alluded to, accounting we've talked about, and then also in the financial advice world, you know, and advising people as to what they should do with respect to their investments. You know, what's the scope of your business in that regard?
One of the things that we see is if a business is successful, you want to be able to have a way as the business owner to either reward your employees for length of service or to be able to put money in your own pocket, and typically what we see is a 401k plan. There are other types of retirement plans, simple IRA, but basically we look at a business that is successful and try to figure out a way that they can reduce their tax liability in such a way to benefit their employees as save for their own retirement.
Well, I appreciate you being here today. Very interesting stuff, and of course people can talk to you if they have questions about this new tax code. I'm sure this will be a busy year, and particularly the upcoming months here will be real busy for you. So I appreciate you taking time out to come here on the show today.
I appreciate you having me, Jamie.
All right, thanks,
Thank
Gary.
you.
We need to take a break. When I come back, we'll be talking sports, a lot of Steelers and Pirates news. Stay with us here on the Jamie Bordas Show.
Fighting for homeowners. Fighting for workers.
Fighting for children.
Fighting for mineral owners.
Fighting for patients.
Fighting for policyholders.
Bordas and Bordas, fighting for justice.
Disasters happen. Pick the team that takes care of them all. Powered by offices in Wheeling, Morgantown, and Pittsburgh, Panhandle Cleaning and Restoration is ready to handle any size emergency at a moment's notice. We have the right people, knowledge, and equipment to respond 24 hours a day.
I'm Bob Huggins. When disaster strikes your home or business, tell your insurance provider you prefer the restoration company the Mountaineers call, Panhandle Cleaning and Restoration.
Welcome back to the show. It's time to talk sports, and a lot to talk about, especially in the city of Pittsburgh. The Steelers with a very disappointing end to the season with the 45-42 playoff loss in the divisional round to the Jacksonville Jaguars. I was at that game, and I'll tell you what, Steelers really dug a hole getting down several scores early in the game, and a lot of, questioning of the coaching in that game, a lot of questioning on the offensive side, the defensive side, all around. Questioning of the head coach and the decision making. Let's take a little bit time, one at a time. First of all, Todd Haley out as offensive coordinator in Pittsburgh. A lot of criticism about the 4th and 1 calls, the decision on 4th and 1, early in the game to pitch it out wide to Le'Veon Bell where the ball goes deep into the backfield. He's dropped for a 4-yard loss. You've got a yard or half a yard to go, and you've got a great running back like Bell. You got a big quarterback like Ben Roethlisberger. Quarterback sneak might seem like the best bet. An off-tackle play where you're going straight ahead hard, and Le'Veon Bell could probably fall forward for half a yard or dive over the pile, whatever. Instead it goes wide where there's an opportunity. Now you've pitched the ball deep, and they've got a chance to make a play if someone gets penetration, and that's exactly what happened. And of course the Steelers don't convert, and Jacksonville gets the ball back, goes down and scores. Later in the game, second half, Steelers seems like they've got some momentum finally. 4th and 1 again, maybe a foot to go this time, and instead of a sneak or running Bell off tackle, a pass with a crossing route to Juju Smith-Schuster, and ball's knocked away. Steelers don't convert and really get themselves into a bad way. It's a little bit head scratching to say the least. Then Jacksonville goes back down, goes up a couple scores, and the Steelers have to get into the scramble mode at that point to try to come back, as they kind of were in all day long. So a lot of questioning of the offensive coordinator, Todd Haley, and he's out after 6 years in Pittsburgh. And, the defense gave up a ton of points, 45 points scored. Now 7 of that was on the offense with the scoop and score that Jacksonville had, but 38 points given up by the defense. Didn't get after Blake Bortles. He had really struggled the week before and has struggled throughout his career. And, the best way, in my estimation, having been a defensive coordinator for a number of years, albeit at the high school level, was to get pressure on the quarterback. That's how you cause disruption, cause problems, especially in the NFL, where, teams aren't going to run for 200-300 yards a game. Instead, the Steelers didn't get a lot of pressure on Bortles, and that allowed them to have some balance with the passing game, the running game, and, to put up the type of points that they did. And then, of course, the decision late in the game to onside kick, the clock was completely mismanaged late in the game. If you look at it, the Steelers had all 3 timeouts left. They burned one on offense, which you just can't do late in the game when you're down, by that type of score. You have to save them for defense. You can always stop the clock on offense by spiking the ball, throwing it out of bounds, running out of bounds. A lot of ways you can stop the clock. On defense, you can't. You have no control over what the other team is going to do. They run it up the middle. You have to call timeout to stop the clock. So they mismanaged it by having to use a timeout on offense. Then, after scoring, instead of kicking it deep, they onside kick, one of the most poorly executed onside kicks by a professional kicker I've ever seen. And Jacksonville's basically almost in field goal range. And despite that, the Steelers still mismanaged the clock because they had 2 timeouts left and the 2-minute warning. They let the clock run down to the 2-minute warning instead of just calling a quick timeout. So second down doesn't even happen until after the 2-minute warning, or at the 2-minute warning instead of before it. They could have had third down being run, at the 2-minute warning. They completely mismanaged it there, so they had less time left later in the game to be able to try to go down and score, and they just weren't even in hurry-up mode. A couple guys, getting tackled in bounds. A guy like AB, who's so experienced, getting tackled in bounds late in the game. You have to instruct your players. They have to be prepared for those situations, know that you have to get out of bounds. That's more important than a couple more yards. So complete clock mismanagement as well. So, offensive coordinator, some mistakes in the game. Defense, looked ill-prepared. Didn't get after the quarterback. And, of course, some of the decisions that come on the head coach's shoulders, like onside kicks, timeouts, instructing the team they need to get out of bounds, all of that was problematic. When you score 42 points, you should win, but nonetheless, offensive coordinator's out. And now you've got Le'Veon Bell, who's not under contract for next year. You don't know what's going to happen there. They need to get Le'Veon Bell re-signed here in the offseason, but it's going to be a difficult offseason with a lot of questions to answer. Now I'm forced to pick the AFC between the Patriots and Jaguars. Not an ideal, but I'm going to go with the Patriots. I hate to say it, but I just think too much experience there. They're going to go on to the Super Bowl, and I think they'll face the Philadelphia Eagles. I've been saying all year that the Vikings will not get to the Super Bowl in their own stadium, so I'll stick with that. I'll say it's going to be Patriots Eagles in the Super Bowl. Let's turn to baseball in Pittsburgh. The Pittsburgh Pirates trade Garrett Cole to the Houston Astros, the former number 1 pick pitcher. Trade Andrew McCutchen to the San Francisco Giants, all in the last week. For what in return? McCutchen's the face of the franchise. He's got some years left. He had a great season last year. I could even live with trading him if they get a lot in return. You're going to alienate your fan base, at least get a bunch in return. They got almost nothing, and they're going to pay a couple $1 million of his salary on behalf of the Giants. It just doesn't make any sense. It's not good business sense. It's not good baseball sense. It's not good sense all around. I hate to see it. My firm has a partnership with the Pirates. It's disappointed me, and I'm not happy to see it happen. But in any organization, you need experience. You need a combination of experience and youth. So you need some veterans and older guys anyway, and they're shipping those guys out, and I think it's a big mistake. And then we'll see what happens here. But the Pirates have a lot of work to do to get the fan base back on board. And speaking of the fan base, Mountaineer fans really upset by the 2 losses. Mountaineers get all the way up to number 2 in the country, then blow leads to Texas Tech and Kansas this week. Interesting to see what happens with the team chemistry and how the team responds. We'll see what type of character this team has in the upcoming weeks and see if they can bounce back as they drive toward March. That's all the time we have this week. Thanks for joining in. We'll see you again next week on The Jamie Bordas Show.